So that was Kathy's connection to Brian Volay, because I think Brian Volay had a
Yes.
Down
Brother.
syndrome sibling, right? Yeah.
Right, uh-huh.
So that's how they met, and that's how Brian connected Kathy with me. And then Mary was in a home because she was getting Alzheimer's, and so Kathy would come up to visit her daughter with one of her other daughters every month. So
Every month, yeah.
I would drive over to Redwood City, about an hour and a half away, and join them for part of their visit with their daughter Mary. And then there was a deacon as part of the program, right? Part of the program that Mary was
Right.
in.
Yeah, he was the chaplain there at the
Yeah.
Alzheimer's facility.
Mark Lodico, yeah,
Yeah.
very spiritual guy. So I joined them, and we would pray together and talk to Mary and all that. So, and then Mary died, and I went down to the funeral or memorial service, which was going in a boat out on the bay off of Redondo Beach and throwing her ashes off the boat into the water, which was I'll never forget that.
I know.
It was a basket with roses around it. And I said, this is what it all comes to. You know, it was
You
just
returned
totally,
to the sea.
Yeah,
George,
we
you
returned
returned
to
to
the
the
sea.
sea from which you came, right?
yes, it was I'll never forget that. Yeah, it was very impacting. So anyway, so Kathy and I keep exchanging books. She says, George, you got to read this. Here's this Hans Kung book, or like the Julian of Norwich book, and I'll have a book to recommend to her. So we go back and forth. So we're kind of like spiritual companions along the way.
No, George is my spiritual director.
No, you're mine. No, you got it back. Anyway, and so yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
and so Kathy, I'll just say a few things. So she's gone to St. Monica's and out there in Santa Monica, and she also goes to the Lakeside Shrine, which is a Hindu place off of what boulevard is that?
Sunset
off of?
Boulevard. It's off the
Sunset.
Yeah, a beautiful place. Have you been there, George? Or?
No, my son keeps telling me, Dad, are you serious that you have not gone and spent a day there? You know.
Yeah, so Kathy's gone there for their services, and then she's gone to Loyola Marymount for Mass on some Sundays. She's gone to the Episcopal Church. She's gone to the Blue Mountain Meditation
You
Center.
get a good idea of my
So she's kind of one of these inter-spiritual people, interreligious persons. So that's why I wanted her to come. She's outside the box.
You know, reminds me, do you know who Houston Smith is? Everybody?
Yeah, I know Houston Smith. Yeah.
Yes.
He's a teacher of world religions and a well-regarded professor of spirituality.
Of comparative religion.
Yeah, comparative religion.
Yeah. I think he may recently have died. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to drop acid with Timothy Leary et al. But anyway, Betty took me to hear him lecture once in about 1986, and it was a lecture series. But he said several interesting things. But one of them was that his methodology of studying other religions, when he would go live that other religion for a while. So, for example, he's joined, a very rigorous Zen Buddhist monastery in Japan. He lived in a Hindu ashram, is that what you call them?
Yeah.
In India for a while. And he said that every time he would do that, he would say, oh, gosh, the Sufis, they're it. They got it all figured out. This is oh, wow, I can't wait for my time here to end, and then I'll start telling everybody about Sufis. And that he'd have that reaction to the Buddhists, to the Hindus, and each time after several months, he got to the stage of saying, well, wait a minute, this is just the same as, X was, the last religion I immersed myself in. And they're both the Muslim Islam, and gosh, and he came to the theory that all the religions are, kind of Richard Rohrism, I guess, headed in the same direction and have this profound core that one has to dig towards and spend time. But when you get there, lo and behold, it's just like all the other ones. And somebody from the audience, I was talking with Ned, this is the story you and I were talking about. Somebody from the audience asked him, well, hey, Mr. Smith, after all of this, what have you found to be to work for you? And he said, oh, that's very easy. I was raised as a Methodist, and that's fine. It works. And he could see a core in Methodism that was the same as the Sufis, the Trappists, whoever else he lived among. So
George, what I get from your remarks is God is smarter than we think. All these
I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, okay.
John's got a book he gave me, John Grimmer, How Big Is Your God? And it sounds like it fits in this context.
Yeah, Houston Smith was a wonderful man. I can remember his lecture so well.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Kathy, you see no one religion is preeminent, but you see all of them as somehow true.
Well, I think I've got to the point where I'm not looking at specific religions. I'm looking at the cosmic reality, the energy of the cosmos, which is love. And I have a hard time really getting my head around it all, because I see the institutions. Whenever a religion or whenever a movement becomes institutionalized, then we get into the ego, then we get into the power structure, and I think overall we have the beauty of the cosmos, the beauty of the source that we should be able to see in everything and every person. And so when I look at organized religion, I see that as limiting, and it's limited by the power structure, by the seduction of power. I guess I'd put it that way. And it seems that once you set up an institution, people get caught up in that. And I'm not saying everybody in the church is seduced by power, but at the very top, and certainly in the Catholic Church today, we're seeing that to the extreme. And so I have a hard time focusing on one particular religion.
I understand. Yeah.
Somebody's background.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mhm. Right, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, very interesting point. Yeah. hmm Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's right. I mean, the whole Eastern, yeah, Native Americans particularly. Yeah. Right. I know. To me, that was the most awful thing that happened in this country. Terrible. We're going to convert these pagans, and they were more deeply spiritual and more connected to Mother Earth than and the divinity of Mother Earth. But I have to say something, and looking back through the development through Judaism and Christianity, we have to take a step back and look at the evolution of consciousness. And I don't know if any of you have read or are familiar with Gene Gebser in his book, The Ever-Present Origin. Very interesting, a very Teilhard approach to things and a very Teilhard view of reality. But if you cannot really take a very conscious look at, say, early Christianity or early Judaism without understanding where consciousness was at that time. And that's why I think today in the 21st century, we should have the most cosmic perspective that you could ever have, given the quantum physicists, the astrophysicists, and what they have found looking at the multi-universes. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling, in my opinion. Yeah, right.
Well, when you mentioned Chardin, he was certainly a Jesuit, you know.
Yep.
Uh,
I know that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I can't remember her name, who's very famous, right? George, do
just
you remember?
No, no, I don't.
It's
um,
really a wonderful story. Yeah. And that was when he was really kind of at the end of his life, really banned cut off from everybody in France. Yeah.
you know, Herbert met him. And Herbert, Kathy, is a Jesuit priest, a theologian, very, now deceased, very involved in the ecumenical movement.
Mhm.
with respect especially to the Church of England, the Anglican Communion, but also the Jews. And Ned, I don't know if you were there when he told me this story, but once when he was in New York, I guess he was a scholastic, he was living at whatever the Jesuit parish was on the Upper West Side. I think it was called St. Ignatius. I'm not sure. Anyway, and somebody said to him, Herbert, there's this priest coming in from France, and please pick him up at the airport or the docks or wherever it was, and put yourself at his disposal for the day. So he said, okay. So here comes this French priest, and they meet, and Herbert says, well, what would you like to do, Father? And he said, oh, gosh, is there a zoo in this city? Could you take me to the New York Zoo? And that's where they went. And I forget what it was that Chardin was so fascinated by in the zoo. I think I want to say giraffes, but I'm not sure. But, you know, ultimately it all boils down to simplicity. I mean, the more insightful and holier somebody is, I find the more simple ultimately they are.
Yeah.
Well, he was very childlike.
Herbert or
no
Chardin?
Chardin. It sounds like childlike,
Yeah,
fascinated, wondering all the time.
And yet he was drafted in the First World War and fought at, was it Verdun, Kathleen? Was it was it at the Battle of Verdun where was his crucible?
Well, you know, it's amazing what war does. You know, I've come across other thinkers who are, their thinking is totally marked by their experience in war. You know, I'm thinking of J.R.R. Tolkien, for example, as well as Maurice Nicole he's a follower of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky of the Fourth Way, and the son of a minister who was in the war as a doctor. And then John McMurray, who's a Scottish philosopher I've come across. They're just horrified what they experience in war, and they really want the whole thing is peace, you know, peace and connectedness, you know.
Right.
Well, I've been immersing myself lately in the life of JFK for various reasons of my own, and have found the war, his experience in World War II, really accounted for much of who he was, you know. And among the things that were true of JFK was he had a complete abhorrence of war and took some risks politically to start the negotiations with Khrushchev that led to the first nuclear weapons limitation treaty, you know, against his own Joint Chiefs of Staff, etc. So,
well, when you look at war, it's kind of really sad that somebody's out there killing all kinds of other people, and therefore you have to go out and kill the people who are killing other people, and then make peace, right?
yeah,
Isn't that kind of bizarre?
Yes,
phenomenon?
But I'm convinced we have wars because we like them. We humans, we like war.
Well,
You know, it gives us heroes. It gives us, you know, people a chance to prove themselves in battle, and then, you know, it generates these mythic stories about self-sacrifice and bravery, and, you know, I think.
Right.
A common enemy. Common enemy, yeah.
and great parades.
Great
You
I
music,
don't know.
strident music.
I find
You
it
know?
hard to, yeah, but none of us have been in war, you know?
Correct.
I think if we were, I don't think my two brothers who were in Vietnam would say they like war. I don't think all the mothers who lost their sons, and I don't think Joe Biden says I like war, you know?
Well, a lot of generals
Yeah, they
are
may
very
too if they're
hate war.
sufficiently protected and behind the lines, yeah. Yeah, but the people whose bodies are lying out there, there's
Mhm.
something wrong with war, and I think, yeah, I don't know if we really do like it. I don't know.
Well,
But is
But part
as
of
a
us does.
species, we do. I think the people that have been in it, have been traumatized. Sure. My son-in-law. Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Uh, uh,
Oh, what a trial by fire today. Sorry, I'll catch up. You go ahead.
Well, John, here's Kathy over at the opposite screen
Hi,
from you.
Kathy.
This is John Grimmer.
Hi, John, how are you?
Better now.
Better now. Good.
Oh, I was watching Bishop Barron talk about Vatican II, and when I tried to switch from that to this, everything shut down. So
Wow.
Is that symbolic? Is that symbolic of something?
uh,
So while I was waiting, I grabbed Richard Rohr's book
Oh, a new one. Okay, yeah.
On the Threshold of Transformation, and I just happened to open up to one of the many things about Jesus is that he never has any trouble with exceptions. He didn't insist on perfect order.
Mhm.
That's what I have.
Good point, yeah.
So enough of my interruption. I'll catch up later. Go right ahead, please.
We're
well,
talking
anyway,
about war.
yeah, I maintain we have wars because we love them. And George Farrig said, well, wait a second. My two brothers fought in Vietnam, and I don't think they speak well of war, and so now I'm drawing a distinction. The species likes war. Those who are sacrificed in it usually don't.
Well, I know that the in the front yard here we have crows, squirrels, blue jays, and smaller birds. And I do know that the crows and then wild turkeys. So the wild turkeys chase away the crows chase away the blue jays, the crows try to attack the squirrels, get the peanuts I put out there, and then I put little seeds out for the small birds. So there is something involved in nature that does have, you know, critters attacking each other. It's not all peace and light out there, nature. I don't know. That's
No,
yeah.
I think you were right, George. George,
I
well,
have,
who was it that said we need a good war now? Was that Teddy Roosevelt, George?
I think so.
And he certainly
He loved war.
loved war. Absolutely. And General Patton, didn't he
Yeah.
have some kind of mystical sense that he
And
was
MacArthur.
some kind of Roman reincarnation, and he wanted to go in there and mop up. It's just this diversity of growth. I'm finding, well, found in our life as aged as I am, that not only internally do we have various qualities that are developed very finely, and other qualities that are very adolescent, and other qualities that are very almost childish, not just childlike. And in society, I think there's an analogy. And so we're all somehow in disparate places, in different ways. And that unity that I believe Jesus promised is something that's I guess what we're all striving for, and we're all coming from it in different ways and with different perspectives.
I have a question. We all agree that we are all connected, right? That we are all connected.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yes.
So I would think that we should all believe at some point we will have evolved to the point where we don't need to have wars. Well, I mean, war is a contradiction to our connectedness.
Certainly is.
So I guess the question is, where are we in our evolution or our spiritual development? Will we ever get to the place where we can really live with each other as knowing that we're all connected? Or is that an impossible? I think that's what we've been taught our destiny is, right?
Oh, when there's a catastrophe, when there's some kind of worldwide pandemic, for instance, we seem to tend to, get together,
Come together.
and yeah, and look at the common goal, which is health,
Right.
or whatever it be. In the good war, World War II, the Great Generation,
Mhm.
etc. As who was it?
Dutch Turkle.
Tom talking about the common enemy, the scapegoat. Well, I don't think that's a conscious scapegoating. I think we've got evil that challenges what we agreed or thought was good, and the Allies, the Axis, and one goes out to stop those people that are killing Jews, for instance, killing Armenians, etc.
It has not, in my opinion.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
For- Tom, for me, that's what I'm trying to, in a very club-footed way, say, and that is that all of us see the good. I think in some of us see it in the same way. Others see it in different ways, and that's there are the people who say, "Look, let's get healthy, let's get well," and they're authorities. And then we've got the perennial people who believe in these conspiracies at one level or another.
Very
And
good.
Kathy, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just said, I'm just muttering. It's all crazy, right? It drives me absolutely crazy. It breaks my heart to see the divisiveness that we are experiencing now in this country politically and within the church right now. The Catholic Church is so divided. I mean, there's no explanation for it. I don't understand it.
My wonderment is that the result of some evil that causes this dissension, or is it that people? I'm told that we've got to take into consideration people's sincere apprehension of, by apprehension, I mean understanding of reality. And some see reality in one way and some see reality in another way. And rather than get together and somehow attempt to harmonize or respect the other person's view of things, we throw things at each other and accuse each other. And that's what I mean by the various growth qualities in a human being who's got a whole lot of information but has no common sense. And I'm making that a little extreme, but we're all emotionally either intelligent or not, or at various levels of emotionality. And those who believe that they live by reason, are I don't know. So there's all of these inequalities and perceptions.
Yeah. Here's another, John, I'm looking at you, and you some time ago recently sent a email that Gary Neer had published a book,
Yes.
You and Me. So I bought a copy. So this is
Oh,
kind
that
of
was-
swerving a little bit. So I
Oh,
sent one to, had one delivered to Kathy, and Kathy, you can describe what you think about it, because it kind of fits in with connectedness. I mean, the title of the book is You and Me.
absolutely. This book, I can't even tell you how I have been moved by this book. When George sent it to me, I sat down and, read it cover to cover. Then I put it on my nightstand, and every night before I go to sleep, I just pick it up and just open it up to a random page and read what Gary has written. And I tell you, every single time I have selected a page to read, it is so in tune with where I am at that moment. It's amazing. I would love to meet this man. I feel like he would get me, right?
We owe it to him to get feedback from you.
I sent him I got his email, and I sent him an email, and I said, You and Me, the you in the book, the you, from my perspective, would be the 92-year-old woman, and the younger therapist. I'm in California, he's in Canada, but we really connected. So I got an email back from him. He said, You really made my day. Nobody has used the term young in describing me for a long time. But I encourage you to read that book and try doing what I'm doing, of just pick it up at night and just pick up and just open up the page and see how it resonates with you, where your daily experience. It's
So
amazing.
I'm going to go to my bookshelf and pull out the slim book that Kathy wrote. Can I do that, Kathy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And you feel okay about sharing?
Oh,
your
yeah, of
experience
course.
with,
Yeah, of course. Of course.
With George is dying. Do you want to share that and tell a little
Yeah,
bit about
right.
it? So you go ahead, and I'll just go get the book here.
Kathy, can I interrupt? Have you talked about Brian Drolet to the group at all?
Well, we were talking about Brian, and George was kind of giving a resume about how, or a reflection on how we knew Brian. And my fifth child was born with Down syndrome. And so I got involved. It was a totally negative experience at the beginning because I had no support. My husband, he did not accept her, but came to the hospital with the picture of my other 4 kids and said, Kathy, we need to concentrate on these kids, right? And my mother, bless her heart, Irish Catholic up to the, well, maybe the good Lord will take her. Why don't you just say, I don't want to have a Down syndrome grandchild, right? And then Monsignor McCarthy from our parish up in Palos Verdes came and to see me, and he said, well, what did your pediatrician? The pediatrician belonged to our parish, and he was on the staff at Children's Hospital here in LA, and Dr. Rounds was his name, and he, loving man, and he was coming from his experience, right, of never seeing a Down syndrome person outside of an institution. And so he said, don't ever take her home. It will ruin your family.
Oh,
And then Monsignor McCarthy came and said, well, what did Dr. Rounds say? And I told him, and he said, well, I guess that's right. So I had to take on the whole world in order to keep my child at home, right? And so that led me to a connection with one of the Immaculate Heart Sisters here in LA, who had started a program for the developmentally disabled. Because at that point in the church, some priests would even say, don't bring your disabled child to church. You know, it'd be better if you don't, you know, that sort of thing. And so this Immaculate Heart Sister started this program, the CDC program, to train teachers to develop a confraternity program for the developmentally disabled. So then I got into that, and then I was surrounded by all the positive people who was so wonderful. And instead of training me to be a teacher, I became the public speaker for this program. And so as a result of that, my husband at that time, I'm not saying that he rejected Mary, he had to learn how to accept this. So we were involved in the Christian Family Movement. I don't know if any of you remember that organization. It was a post-Vatican II group. And so we went to Notre Dame for the annual CFM convention. And I said, I'm volunteering to give a seminar or a workshop on the developmentally disabled within the Catholic Church and training them, and just to bring people's knowledge to their needs, right? So who happened to be at this little workshop but Brian DeLay, because his brother I guess he had Down syndrome. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, so that was the connection with Brian DeLay, kind of around the world here to get to how I met him. But
so George Crook, have you been in touch? Are you aware that Brian is planning to come to California to celebrate his brother's birthday?
No, I have completely lost track with Brian. So I need to reconnect with him.
He's slow to respond. I'm still waiting to hear about our connection with you, but at least to let everybody know there is a plan in the works where Drolet will be in California in the next few months.
Really? And you know where, in LA or in Northern California? Or
as soon as I know, you all will know. Promise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Southern, I'll bet. Okay. I have not followed through yet on calling him, John. I just had an absurd week, but I'll get to him.
No guilt today. No guilt.
We don't believe in it.
Returning, Kathy, to your point about where are we with regard to conflict and war, I'm just reflecting, Jesus gave the message, but it sure as the devil hasn't gotten through to the world at large. Yeah, and when I went on pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2014, and it was a delight and a very spiritual experience, but I became aware of how the nation of Israel treats those people who are settlers in various places around.
Yeah, right.
It's scandalous.
It is awful.
And I'm just ashamed of what goes on in that regard.
I am too, right? I've been to Israel also, and to me, it was just the most wonderful experience that I had. I was in the travel industry for 25 years and taking groups around. And prior to that, I was like 100 years ago, I was a TWA airline stewardess based right here in LA, right? So that from the age 22 on till 92, for 70 years, travel has been my life.
Okay, you've got to confess. Do you go back to the propeller days?
Well, the old props, yeah, well, yeah, oh yeah, of course. And when I flew for TWA, Howard Hughes owned the airline, right?
Oh,
So
yeah,
all the
yeah.
Hollywood people on the TWA Connies, you know, that's the picture of the TW, it had a triple vertical,
That's right.
vertical stabilizers, right? And every film, because Howard Hughes was in the movie business, every film where there was an airplane involved, it always was TWA, right?
So did your career sensitize you to sexism?
Oh, listen, I could tell you about sexism that you wouldn't even believe the stories I can tell you. I mean, about where women were in 1951. Are you kidding me? In the airlines, and the requirements for the job, and the restrictions. If you gained, they would determine what your average weight should be, your desired weight. And so if you gained 5 pounds over that, they could take you off schedule with no pay. And when I got married, I had to quit. You couldn't be married and be an airline hostess, right? And so I said to my husband, how come, he was a flight engineer with American Airlines? I said, how come you didn't have to quit, when you got married? This is not right. Anyway, those were the days. Thank God they're gone, right?
So Kathy, do you want to get back to telling about what Sophia meant as you were going through your experience with your husband?
Well, it was,
That's,
if you all believe in miracles, and this was a miracle because my husband was diagnosed in 2000 with Alzheimer's. This is a man who was so involved in the community and a businessman, everything that if you could ever, you would never imagine that this could have happened to him, but it did. And so from 2000 until 2006, I managed to have him stay at home. I had to have people help me, but I was the primary caregiver for him then. But it got to the point where he fell in the middle of the night a couple of times. He had to call 911 and get the paramedics there. And so it came time for me to make the decision to find a residential facility for him for Alzheimer's, which I did. And so he entered this facility outside of Napa in November of 2006. In the summer of 2006, I had heard about the Sophia program. And so I went to the summer program and met a man named John Fox, who was a wonderful poet, and introduced me to poetry, which I liked poetry, but not to write it myself, because I'm more of a North Beach poet. It's like a kind of a free form, no rules and regulations, stream of consciousness poetry, I guess you would call it. And so all of a sudden, I don't know where it came from, but poetry just came flowing through me. And so I entered the Sophia program, the 2-year program, 1 weekend a month for 2 years, beginning in September of 2006. And so George died in December of 2007. And so this program and the poetry writing and I was just reading all my papers and Jim Conlin's comments and stuff on it. And I would put poetry that I had written in with all my papers, but it was a life-changing, total life-changing experience for me. I can't tell you. I mean, to this day, I am who I am because of the Sophia program.
and could you say about your experience with George when he was dying?
I got to the hospital. I got to Green Hills about 9 o'clock in the morning, and all that week he had been really going downhill. And so the caregivers there said, Kathy, we'll monitor his breathing and we'll call you in the middle of the night if we think you need to come down here. So when I woke up that morning, they had not called me. And so I got in my car and I drove down, and this was another experience I had in driving from Napa down to near Vallejo, which is like a 20-minute drive. It was like I totally lost my faith, I think, at that point. It was like I don't believe in any of this stuff anymore. That's the frame of mind I had. But when I walked in there, George now was not struggling with breathing or just being being nervous or whatever. And so I sat by his bedside, and where the week before that, he did not recognize me when I came to see him on my way to the Sophia program. But today I looked at him, he wasn't talking, but you can tell more about a person if you look in their eyes. And looking in his eyes, he heard everything I said to him. And I just said, thank you, George, for coming into my life. I love you. And I talked to him about some of the trips that we had taken. And so about 1 o'clock, the caregiver or the nurse there said, well, you count the seconds between his breaths. And it got up to, we were counting, and all of a sudden, that was the end. He was not breathing anymore, and he just turned white. It was just like the color just drained out of his whole body, and he would just peacefully just left. And so while I was sitting there during the daytime, talking to him and just sitting there thinking, at one point, it was almost like I was out of my body in a way, and thinking about all the people that are dying with nobody there to say, I love you and to hold your hand. And then I was at the foot of the cross. I don't know, I can't tell you anything, but I was standing at the foot of the cross with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and looking up at Jesus on the cross suffering. And it was so awful. It was so, there was nothing I could do to relieve his suffering. And it was so real. Well, after that, I could never go on Good Friday to the stations. I can't do that because I don't know what it was. I was someplace, but I was at the foot of the cross. So I don't know what anyone can make of that. Some psychologist would probably say I was really crazy, but I knew I was there. I knew I was there, and I knew I had that feeling of just agony of not being able to help somebody who, like Jesus, who was in such pain and such agony.
Yeah, and I think when you told it to me before, you said something, you just had a feeling of love, just apart from.
Absolutely. The feeling of, I had two feelings that that Jesus was able to take on all of the suffering of all of us, of our negativity, I would put it that way, the human condition, and really immerse himself in that and really to feel that. But there was a feeling, of just overcome. To be with a person you love so much, and there's nothing that I could do for him. So that led to my final poem in my book, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for your book. I can't find it.
You can't find it? Oh, I've got one.
Yep.
Wait a second.
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon. It's there's a lot of poetry in it. Huh?
What's it called?
She's going to get her copy.
Yeah, here's my book. Here it is.
Widow with a
Widow
Husband.
with a Husband, an Alzheimer's Experience.
Do you want to read the last poem? Kathy, could you read the last poem for us?
Yeah, I will.
When you're talking about.
Okay. Let me see here. It's called, because George and I were in the travel business together, and we took groups all over the world. And so this poem is called Bon Voyage. You're leaving on the greatest journey of your life, a trip you must take without me. Together we explored exotic places in every corner of the world, holding hands, laughing, making love. I kiss you goodbye as you board the ship. Bon voyage, smooth sailing. The anchor has been lifted. The ship moves away from the pier. Old friends aboard wave to you and greet you with open arms. You're about to experience the greatest journey of your life. Goodbye, my love. Makes me cry when I read this. And it's been a long time, right? He died in 2007, so it's been 14 years since he's been gone. But
Yeah.
um,
A wonderful poem.
anyway,
Beautiful. Yeah. You know what you just reminded me of, and I think the four of us might remember in the side chapel at St. John's Seminary was that beautiful painting of St. Joseph's death with Mary and Jesus beside.
oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
A fabulous piece. But what just came to mind is your reflection on your loss of George in that loving way. I think they said it was Mary, the wife of Clopas, who was at the foot of the cross.
Mhm.
And almost for sure, she was one of the two disciples who walked on the road to Emmaus with Jesus
Mhm.
afterwards.
After that, yeah.
And I mean, your life experience at the cross reminds me of Mary, the wife of Clopas, on the road to Emmaus. And we suffered at the foot of the cross, but look at what we got as
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
product.
Hmm.
I don't know. I can't really explain what happened to me, but it wasn't like an out-of-body experience that you hear people have, like a near-death experience or something like that. I was sitting right there. This was just, I don't know. I can't explain what it was. I can't explain how it happened or where I was, but I was sitting there next to my husband, but I was at the foot of the cross at the same time. And it wasn't like I'm just thinking about it. I was enveloped in it. I can't explain it.
That's an amazing.
I am
Yeah.
very
Good
sick,
for
yeah.
you.
To this
Yeah,
And
day.
I'm guessing, Tom Welbers, that over your years of priesthood, you've encountered many people who have had those spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
You've had a chance to encourage them to do that, to
Mhm.
embrace. Oh. Seminary training, right? Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, but you must have been at numerous deathbeds, giving extreme unction and anointings. But Kathy, back to your story. It seems like a half an hour before you were with George, there was nothingness. It was kind of nihilism.
It was like
Right, there
like
was
I didn't believe in
everything-
anything. It was all taken away.
everything was
Now, how do you
gone.
explain that?
Yeah, and then you're beneath the cross. So
Yeah.
to me, there's something deeply spiritual about that. It didn't come from your mind.
No, it didn't.
So I don't
And
know
for
what
me to
make
go
of it.
from all the Sophia experience to driving down to Green Hills, and all of a sudden I don't believe anything anymore. I mean, was that like the dark night of the soul, except it didn't last for years, like St. John, right? But John of the Cross,
Oh.
or
Yes.
So is that grace?
I don't know.
Johnny, your idea of grace?
It is my idea of grace, and it reminds me of my mentor, God rest him, Gene O'Toole, who just passed away, who used to frequently talk about how we're all called to wrestle with our faith.
Mhm. Yes,
That it's a lifelong
right.
experience. I mean, yours was so dramatic, but we all have that wrestling episode out of the Old Testament
Mhm.
altering our life, I think.
Well, not to mention Jesus. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yes,
There
right.
you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
absolutely. But it's very interesting for me now because I'm 92 years old. I'm at the, the door's over there, right? I mean, I'm not expecting to leave tomorrow or the day after, whatever, but it's right there. I mean, I'm at the end of my life. I'm at the last segment of my life. And it's very, very interesting because the connection that I feel, George has not left me. I mean, George is so close to me. And my son was like, George died in December of 2007. My oldest son died in September of 2010. And my daughter, Mary, my youngest daughter, died in 2014. So in a rather short period of time, I had some really challenges, but they've never left. They've never left. When I do my meditation, they're so here with me that it's just, I can't explain it. So my feeling about making the transition, and I think it's interesting because why isn't in our culture, nobody calls dying. We all, oh, so-and-so passed away. I think if one more person says passed away to me, I'm going to deck them, right? Because why say, I don't know.
How about evaporated?
They need some, they just can't accept the fact that our lives we're not, and I don't believe in death per se. More, it's a transition on our path back to the divine. But I feel like I'm doing this. I'm going through this in a group, and with my late husband and Joe and Mary. Is that weird? It's probably some therapists that have
No.
day with me, right?
I don't think that's weird at all.
Yeah, I'm going through this with my dogs who've gone ahead of me.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah,
got 7 dogs and 5 cats in my
and they're all waiting for
companionship,
you,
yeah.
right?
But Kathy, you have a great term for these years that you're living right now. Do you want to say what it is? Do you remember? Bonus years. You're in the bonus years.
Oh, my bonus
use that.
years. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yes, because when I turned 90, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go on Google and find out what the life expectancy is for a white woman in the United States at age 90, right? Because I've already exceeded the what do you call it? The regular life expectancy, the statistical thing, right? And so it came up 95.4 or something. So now I'm 92. So now I should do it again and see if the older you get, do they just keep extending it? I don't know.
We do.
Yeah, and people say to me, "Oh, Kathy," because so people don't believe I'm 92, right? And so you'll live to be 100. I'm not jumping up and down to be 100 years old, right?
How about
Everything
the poetry?
hurts now. What's it going to be when I'm 100?
How about
Oh my God. Oh,
Wow.
you're kidding.
Jeez.
Really? Oh. Really? They have great
Wow.
DNA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, as long as you're in good shape and you know where you are, that works. But
Kathy,
The Chosen, no, I haven't. The Chosen, is it on Netflix? Oh. Oh, the Joseon. Okay.
Who's behind it? Sir?
Oh, really interesting. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so ridiculous, that whole thing. Don't get me started on that one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what's it,
Who
what's it
produced
called,
it?
Tom?
The Chosen. And who produced it, Tom?
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
This is something, Tom. This is something that someone actually said to him, or he's what? This is something that came to him in prayer.
Ah,
Hmm. Yeah, Kathy, I feel very strongly. Of course, this is, my own perspective and perception, and I don't know, thought, feeling that uh, when you went through that period of, this is trying to explain it rather than embrace it, as Tom says. But I think embracing it is the right thing to do. You hit bottom. You didn't
Right.
believe a bit of it. I've had a friend tell me that once, and he ultimately committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
But you, um, I don't believe a bit of it. You get to the side of your husband. You tell him how much you love him. You recount for him and for yourself the many kinds of little scenes throughout your life
Yeah.
and you write the poem. I don't know when that poem was written, but then you're called, it seemed to me, and there is Jesus on the cross,
Yeah.
affirming to you who he is and what he's done for us all, and in that particular instance is doing for you and your husband. It's salvation. It's transformation.
Mm.
And I just can't not tell you that.
Well, it seems like it's a kind of love washing over you
Yes,
as you look up. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Talk another.
Uh, so,
You know,
Lord,
talking about Mary Magdalene and catching your reaction, Kathy, to Mary Magdalene as the infamous prostitute,
Yeah.
instead of the first
Right.
apostle, right? But I flashed on two movie scenes for some reason. There's nothing profound in what I'm going to say, but one of them is one of the lives of Jesus by somebody that was made 20 years ago, or Zeffirelli, or I don't even remember what it was, but there's a scene in there where she hears that Jesus is nearby during his public ministry, and she is running to see him, and just the joy and the gratitude and the energy with which she's running to see it was quite something. It's somebody who's been born again and experienced God's love like that. The other scene is there's a movie that I particularly like that I guess never really caught on, called Risen, Risen.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Nope.
Yeah, well, I'd recommend it, but
I'll
yeah,
write it.
it's from a novel about the resurrection of Jesus, and the central character in it is this Roman tribune whom Pilate commissions, keep a guard on the grave. The last thing I need with these wacko Jews is for a rumor to start that this guy got out of the tomb.
Yeah.
Tribune, you're not going to let that happen, right? But anyway, so it does happen. And then Pilate says to the dude, find the body, and he's chasing all through Jerusalem to find the body, and is not in the cards that he's going to. But at one stage, it gets to him that Mary Magdalene, somebody called Mary Magdalene, was a witness, allegedly. And so he goes into the barracks of these Roman soldiers and he says, does anybody here know who Mary Magdalene is? And all the soldiers go, yeah, I do.
Oh, yes, terrible.
That is funny.
Yeah. But
she's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the Orthodox churches.
Yeah.
Well, is it in the Orthodox churches, Tom? Isn't she considered an apostle? Yeah.
so
Would you?
could she have been the first pope, really? It sounds like it.
As a woman, I can't keep my mouth shut here. I have to say something as a woman. Why do we discredit any relationship between Mary Magdalene and Jesus that goes beyond being the number one disciple? I mean, could these two people could have fallen in love with each other? I mean, why is that so horrible?
Why is it important?
Because
To
I
those
think
who say
they were
she
so
did.
connected. They were so connected spiritually that it just, as a woman, and having had my marriage to George was like, it was like the most wonderful gift in my life, right? But I know what it's like to have that connection, that love connection, and why in the institutional churches they know you can't. I don't know. It drives me crazy because I think that Mary Magdalene and Jesus had a very deep love, and I'm not saying they were married, but they had a very intimate relationship.
Well, that makes all the sense.
I would like to add to that, Kathy, Tim Gray from the Augustine Institute, who led the pilgrimage that I went on,
Oh, okay.
is strongly of the opinion that Mary Magdalene was quite wealthy, that she had a business, and it very well may be that her business, she got so consumed in her business that she lost her faith, that Jesus brought her back to her faith, and then she had her wealth to help support the mission of Jesus and travel. Tom, I see you nod. I don't know if you had some. Yeah. Ah.
I love it. Mhm. Well,
That's
we'll all
good.
find out one day, won't we?
That's what our faith is.
Right, absolutely.
We're all in the exit row. Here's another aspect about your life, Kathy, to me, is what you and Tracy did. When was that? In 2016 or 2018 or
Women
election?
2018? Yeah,
Was that
women
20?
2018.
Yeah, they founded a website and they went throughout the United States interviewing young, never before women candidates to Congress. Is that correct?
We interviewed women who were running for Congress who had never run for office before. And my daughter is a podcast producer and she's a really good interviewer. And I have the travel background. So the two of us put this together and she set up the interviews and we interviewed the woman who is now the mayor or the governor of Michigan, who's been so harassed. We interviewed her. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And also the woman, the congresswoman from Orange County,
Is that
Katie
Is that Katie Porter or no?
Katie Porter. And then Katie Hill was up in
Santa Clara? Santa
Yeah,
Clarita?
Katie Hill, and she resigned. Remember, she resigned because she had an affair with one of her staff or something. But we interviewed both of those women. And Katie Porter was really, really a neat woman, very neat woman. But that was
And your mission was to post these. They had a website that you could see these interviews.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think it just came down. Tracy said we shouldn't. I mean, she has access to it, but it was on there until just a few months ago. But you saw what happened in the Congress in 2018. The number of women who were elected to the House of Representatives.
So
we
could you
did
and
our
Well,
part.
Tracy,
Republican women.
yeah, could you do this again? Could you do this again, Kathy? You
I
and
don't know.
Tracy?
I'm running out of gas, right?
Let
I don't
them
know
come
whether
to you
they're-
this time.
Pardon me?
Let them come to you this time.
Yeah, right. No, we definitely have to get involved as of next year in 2024. My gosh, you can't sit back on your hands on that one.
So another aspect of your spirituality is the Blue Mountain. I don't know if it's a Zen center and the
The Blue
Lakeside
Mountain Center,
Shrine-
yeah.
and the
yeah.
Lakeside Shrine. Could you talk about that aspect of what's meaningful to you about that?
Well, that was another interesting experience. I had gone out to Hawaii to visit my brother and sister-in-law who had a place over on Maui. And so my brother said, oh, here, you might find this book interesting. And now, because I have a problem bringing thoughts up, anyway, it was written by Eknathaswaran, and I had never heard of him. And so I read that book all the way back to San Francisco, flying from Honolulu. And so I had, oh my gosh, the Blue Mountain Center, it's not too far from Napa. That's when I was living in Napa. And so I made a connection with them, and they have weekend retreats. It was very, very interesting. And it was through somebody that I met at, I think it was one of the Immaculate Heart nuns that had left, there was a whole group of them that left the teaching school. And I don't know, anyway, she was one of them who was at the Blue Mountain Center for a weekend retreat. And I met her, and she was the one, she said, oh, you live in Napa. Well, do you know anything about the Sophia program? That was how I found out about that. Isn't that unusual?
Yeah.
Because if I hadn't read that, but my brother hadn't given me that book, I would have never
Yeah.
known about Blue Mountain, and I would have never made the connection to Sophia, which changed my life.
So what's the book?
Feathers of the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Say it again, John.
It's
Oh, just the little feathers of the Holy Spirit.
yes,
Little
right.
feathers.
Back and see.
And I
He
can't
was
pull
there.
up the name
Yeah.
of that book in my mind right now. I'm sorry, but a book by Eknathaswaran, who was the leader of the one who found the Blue Mountain Center of Meditation. It's up in it's up north of San Francisco.
Yeah. And then you read the autobiography of a yoga
Oh, I'm still reading that one.
by
Yeah,
Paramahansa Yogananda.
yeah, by Yogananda. Yeah. So how do you describe me? I'm like a mess, right? I can't be
Holy-
defined.
Holy
right?
mess.
But she's a mess, a real, crazy woman.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That covers a lot of sins, right?
Yes. On the journey.
well, Mirabai Starr, do you know her name?
Yeah.
Goes up in Richard Rohr.
Yeah,
She's written a book, and she has a term, I don't know, maybe if you Google it, it'll pop up. It's called interreligious or interspiritual. I think and I feel I'm kind of in that category too, where you receive the feathers of the Holy Spirit come from all directions, not just from the cage of Catholicism, which I grew up in, but they're coming from all kinds of sources. It's like they're blown in by the storm or falling
Right.
down from a hurricane someplace or whatever. And I see myself as Catholic rooted, and culturally Catholic in a lot of way, but the institution is kind of blown open.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like the shuttle that goes up, the Challenger, where you need all that structure to get up off the ground.
Yeah, right.
And then
And
it
then you're-
falls away. It's
then
got to
you're
fall
free.
away or it won't be successful. And then the booster rocket falls away. And then,
And then George, you're free, right?
yeah, because we don't exist for the church exists for us, right? The
Absolutely.
church exists for us to help us find the way.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Well, isn't that what Father Rohr says about the first part of life and then the second part of life?
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Burn up.
Right. You're absolutely good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
17,500 miles per hour.
Yeah, it's
I think-
hard for me to see Catholicism as but a booster rocket, you know, sending us to someplace better than Catholicism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it could be, but what is that place?
Well, Jesus did that. He boosted beyond Judaism.
Right.
Buddha boosted beyond Hinduism.
No,
Uh,
I get the concept. It's just that where is it that we can wind up that's better than, say, a sacramental life with Jesus and the Catholic forms we've grown up with?
yeah,
You know, in other words,
yeah, those are perfectly good. Yeah.
yeah. What? Go ahead, Tom. Okay.
Right. Absolutely.
But they may still receive the sacraments, like Joe Biden. Really, Joe Biden's a
Oh.
mystic.
Don't get me started on that.
Oh, don't, Kathy, don't get any of us started on that. I am enraged at certain
know.
bishops.
Do me a favor, and you know I'm a rocket boy from way back.
Okay.
And keep the analogy for a minute that we need the booster to get us up to
Yes.
velocity of 17,500 miles per hour. But if our direction is not correct, we will not go into orbit.
Right.
If we've got the booster and the direction, then we live in orbit with a
Mhm.
perspective
Yes.
that is incredibly above
Yeah.
what's down below. I love
Well,
the analogy.
I
I'll
love
buy that. I'll buy that. But is the point, George and Kathy, that if we become truly enlightened, then we won't be saying the rosary, we won't be going to mass, we'll be in some better reality. And if so, I'm all for it. Where do I find that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's there's Bernard Lonergan even has some theory behind it too. It's called going from the particular to the general,
Uh-huh.
going from particular forms beyond that. And there's another, there's some thoughts I could send your way, but right now I'm kind of at that place. I don't need to have somebody anoint me when I'm dying. I don't need to go to communion.
Yeah.
I think there's a real meaning to it, but something's happened inside of me,
Mhm.
maybe through a combination of Christianity and Buddhism and meditation and direct experience, trying to get to a direct experience of God rather than a mediated experience. There's nothing wrong with the mediation. I'm not knocking it at all, but if people stay at that level, they may not even get to the direct experience.
Right.
Well, but
Yeah.
okay, but you like George, you just said you don't need to go to communion. Okay, I'll buy that. But why wouldn't you want to go to communion?
Well, because the same reason Simone Weil was a French woman who was drawn to Catholicism, but she didn't accept it because she wouldn't be able to identify with the people who couldn't go to communion, the people that were in the outs. Now I experienced when I left the Catholic Church, or I resigned, I did not want to go to communion. But it did happen that communion came to me. I went to the Association of Christian Therapists, and which there were Catholics there, and they had a mass, and they had too many hosts, and I was sitting there in the front row, and the priest came along and handed me one, and I took it. I said, okay, but I deliberately, if I went to a Catholic church, I would not go to communion. I would not say, well, I have a right to go to communion, because I wanted to identify with all those Catholics who couldn't go to communion because they were on the outs. So I says, I'm one of those, and I'm with them.
Well,
Until
when I was on the outs, because
Yeah.
I wasn't remarried in the church, my approach was, screw those guys that make these stupid rules.
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go to communion.
Yeah.
But instead of boycotting it, my approach was simply to defy them.
Yeah. Well, that's
which
totally valid too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Sure.
mhm.
And some sort of union with the divine.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well,
then-
yeah.
Yeah. We can try to prepare the ground, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have not chosen me, I have chosen you. Okay.
Kenosis, self-emptying. Yeah. And the feathers of the Holy Spirit, John, that you talk about, because
Right?
I think we all have stories about how one thing leads to another. Kathy,
Yes.
your brother
And
giving
that's
you,
where,
you going to
that's
the
where
Blue Mountain. Yeah.
it's a combination of both our personal journey and evangelizing. And in one way or another, every one of us has daily calls to not only be the best that we can, but to evangelize and to share it. And whether that's with the guy who put new floors in my place or the clerk in the store, there's an evangelizing that goes with our own spiritual journey, I think. And they were silent.
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything that's being said. I think, I don't think Catholicism is necessarily the only act in town. But it's sort of the act where we got tickets at a very young age to go
Right.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. We only have one life to live, as far as I know. And so we happen to be, I didn't choose to be white or born in 1942 in San Diego either. I showed up, popped up, here I am. And so, yeah, I was born into kind of an immigrant Catholic family, Irish, Scottish, Austrian, Luxembourgish type thing, and grew up in like the typical parochial school church, Catholicism, Holy Name Society. That was kind of our culture and all that. We didn't go to Protestant churches, or we had somebody that got married in the Methodist church and they were kind of out there, we didn't associate with them as much as with other relatives, etc.
Mm.
So I've only got one life to live. So I can't be faulted if I say, well, yeah, I have a deep love for the roots and for what I have gained. But the institution, I call myself a refusenik, like people that left the Soviet Union, they're Russian to their soul, but they are not communists. They could not live in the Soviet system. So I, for whatever reason, could not live in the system. But other people can, and I could have lived in it too if things were slightly different. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. I would certainly not want to be transported back in time to the pre-Vatican II Catholic Church.
Oh,
We all grew up in and we all
Yeah.
loved in certain ways.
Sure.
But I'm sort of glad something changed here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I just wanted to offer an insight that I've had. Do you remember was it Star Wars what was the name of the movie with the kid from some other planet or whatever, not a planet, but another.
E.T.
Oh, E.T.
E.T. Remember E.T. looking out the window and saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, try to
He
get
got his
yourself
finger right
into
in the-
that. Try to get yourself mentally, emotionally into that scene, because that's where we are, in my opinion, my experience of this yearning for home, which is yearning for the connection. Well, we are all connected to the divine, but the actual experience of being able to experience that oneness, that going home, it's a very powerful vision if you can think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Have you heard of the Course in Miracles? Marianne
Course in
Williamson, who
yeah.
was the Democratic candidate and was in some
Yeah.
debates.
Marianne Williamson, yeah, right.
Marianne
Yeah.
Williamson, yeah. The
My
Course in
ex
Miracles,
has done it.
I studied that for a number of years
Oh.
because a mediator in Pomona, whom I started having lunch with, who was the coolest guy. He was there with his office. Picture yourself as an attorney or in the court system. His office was off a busy hallway at the Pomona Superior Court, and people would be sent over to him for mediation. So he's in there meeting with somebody. Somebody knocks on the door. The judge says 1, 2, or 3 more people over during the next 2 hours. This guy gets up and he's as cool as a cucumber, and he says, hello. He says something to the people. He had something about him that was a presence and a inner peace that, anyway, he studied the Course in Miracles. He came from a Baptist background, but they have this word, if you take atonement and change it to at one ment.
At one month, absolutely.
At one ment, they have, in the Course in Miracles, we have the illusion of separation.
Right, and we're not separated.
Right. And we, that comes home to us when we go to buy a ticket for something, and we're we just got to be the one that just missed getting a ticket. Well, we're not one then, right? But there's another way at which we are one. I can say, I'm glad that guy got it. Okay, because he's one of me and I'm one of him. And okay, but the at one meant that there's an illusion of separation.
Right.
So when I die, I hope I can feel like, hey, I'm going away from separation into a mystery of oneness. I don't even know what it's about.
Yeah,
but
right. Absolutely. Right.
That's E.T. Yeah.
yeah.
S.E.T.
Okay. Kathy, did you?
Yeah, I think it's about.
I was going to ask, did she ever meet Brian's and Steve's parents?
Brian Dole's?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
Okay.
But I met his brother. Remember his brother was in Vietnam and stepped on a landmine or something? Remember that? And we got acquainted with his brother. It was like, the anti-Vietnam War thing that we were very involved in. But it was his brother, remember? And his brother.
It was one of several brothers.
Yeah, but none of them went to Vietnam. it's got to be a friend or something.
There's got to be somebody else in because
Yeah.
who, George, help me. Who am I thinking of?
Yeah, I don't know who you're thinking of either. Yeah,
But it wasn't a sibling of Brian's.
it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know about Brian's family, but
Well, a connection with Brian and who was
my
that?
brother John was in Vietnam and he stepped on
Who-
my brother stepped on some kind of stake, but he didn't get his
Yeah.
leg blown off or anything. I don't know
Yeah,
if
no, so it wasn't.
there's somebody else.
I'll
Anyway,
have to, maybe I'll have to call Tracy. She'll remember. She's
Yeah.
my memory person.
so Kathy, what's your experience of coming here in this?
It's
Mail-
wonderful. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for letting me be, just not even to be listening to you, but that you would even let me speak, right? And listen to someone crazy.
We love
Eric,
it.
the
My crazy
matchmaker.
Trying to make up for centuries of repression.
No.
Diversity, that's what we need, right?
So maybe Kathleen could have a ticket to come back again sometime. I know we didn't get onto other topics like Ilia Delio. Do you know her?
Yeah,
The Cosmic Christ. She's written some books and so forth.
he's great. Yeah.
And there's other things. Anyway. Well, thanks for coming, Kathy.
Thank you
It's been
so
a
much for
delight.
inviting me and thank you for a meeting. It was so nice meeting all of you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you
Likewise.
didn't get to talk about John Carroll, his new book, right? You
Oh,
read
John,
it?
oh my gosh.
and
yeah, I
it's-
gotta reread that one.
It's waiting for me in the library. Do you know what it's
James-
called?
Yeah, James Carroll. Yes,
What-
it's called. The
Do you know
Truth at the
James-
Heart- The
James Carroll,
Truth
who's
at the
a
Heart
priest
of the Lie by James
back in
Carroll.
Boston. He was a priest who wrote this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wallace. He had a wonderful book of prayers. I remember I bought. Yeah,
Yes,
right,
almost
exactly.
exactly.
Thanks,
I've read 2 or 3 of his books.
Yeah, so he has a
Oh.
new one out. Yeah, this is the latest book, and Kathy's already read it.
Yeah, he's got great insights into the American Catholicism
Right.
Yeah.
mhm.
of our youths. You know,
Right.
1968, the Vietnam War.
Right, he
The
was
whole
a
thing, yeah,
journalist,
right,
right, for the Boston
absolutely,
Globe,
yeah.
I think. Yeah,
Huh?
Yeah.
I think he was a columnist for the Boston Globe on religious
I
matters.
think so, yeah. mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
that's
think
probably
so,
first.
yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote a novel about a family like the Kennedy family, you know, like a very rich, prominent, powerful Irish Catholic family in New York, in Boston. I can't think of the name of it, but it was good.
Yeah. And another aspect, Kathy, for a while, or maybe you still do, go to the Episcopalian Church, the Episcopal
Yeah,
Church.
sometimes,
Yeah.
well, George and I were married in the Episcopal Church in Napa. And of course, half of the people that were parishioners there were excommunicated Catholics because they were divorced and remarried, right?
So
Yeah,
it's good
yeah,
that we have,
We call it Catholic light, right?
yeah,
Catholic light. I like Fond of
Thank
you.
you again so much, all of
Yes.
you.
Tom wants his,
Thank you,
it.
Kathy.
Blessing.
Tom
Thank
wants
you for
his
coming
fondue
to the top
stuff.
of it.
yeah. Let me make one more comment before we go, because I'd like to follow up with an email, but I got this book about Fred Lawrence. Fred Lawrence is really big on conversation and grace. Conversation, friendship, and grace. And the name of his book is called, that students wrote in 2016 for him. It's called Grace. I think it's called Grace and Friendship. I'll show it to you the next time we get together. I just got the book in the mail, but it has to do with conversation, what we've been having here, conversation and grace. And
Okay.
Fred sent me a letter that just last week, I sent him a letter and he sent me a note back that has to do with this topic. So I'll excerpt this section of it and send it to you. And maybe Fred would even join us on one of our conversations.
That
That would
sounds
be
like a great
fantastic.
idea.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea.
Or Fred and Sue to get more feminine
Yeah.
because how's
You're
that?
doing good work, Eric.
The feathers.
Thank you so much. I'll say goodbye. and I
Okay,
thank
Kathy.
you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
God
you.
bless.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Kathy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So
Sure,
I'll
why
send you
not?
that. I'll send you that email from Fred. How's that? Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good, George.
Okay, great. Okay,
Look forward to it, George. Take
great.
care.
Will
God
do.
bless.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Have a good week.
Thanks for